Good morning. Welcome back from our Christmas break. We're going to start with simple interest and compound interest this week. So today we're going to start with simple interest. If we're looking at simple interest, and usually it's when we have a loan, maybe from a bank. And so we're looking at just straight multiplying. So we have three things we're going to multiply. Our P, which is our starting amount. Okay, it's also known as the principal. Our R is our interest rate, okay? And we're gonna always have to change that rate to a decimal. And we'll do an example in just a second. And then our T is our time, and that's in years. So how long are we gonna pay this loan back for? Sometimes they give it to you in months, but you do have to change it to years. Okay, so for example, I'm gonna have a principal amount of $3,000. That's what I'm going to put into, or that's what I'm going to get out, maybe from the bank, or I put it in and I earn money. Okay, I'm going to put this into the bank. My R is going to be 6%. And my time in years is going to be 4 years. Okay. Now, the one thing it said up here was we always have to change that rate to a decimal. So remember when we do that, and I have 6% here, I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. I'm moving that decimal place. So now the decimal's over here, and I put a 0 right here. So really, it is 0.06 for my rate. Okay, so when I go to solve this to figure out how much interest my money is earning when it sits in the bank is I'm going to have interest, which is our I, equals my principal, my 3,000, the money I started with, times my new decimal of 0.06 for the rate, and then times 4. You can do this in Desmos. If you have a calculator, you can do it on your phone calculator because it all is just multiplying. Okay, nothing fancy. So when you do this, you put it in your calculator and you will get an interest or an I of 720. Okay, so for this bottom part here, we have our P located right here. Let me change the color so you can kind of see it. So it's right here. It's 5,200. Okay, that is our P value. Here's our loan term in years, so that's our T. And then here's our R, our rate. Now remember, every one of these on our rate column, we're going to have to change to a decimal. So remember, if it doesn't have a decimal, you start at the end of your number and you're going to scooch it over 2 times. So we really get 0.08. Okay, let me make sure that decimal shows up. If it has a decimal, start at the decimal and you're going to still move it 2 places to the left. So there's 1 and there's 2. So now it's 0.0825. And you're going to do this for the rest of the column. Okay? And it just keeps working on itself and over and over and over. Keep moving it 2 decimal places. So when you go to figure out the interest, okay, it's like what we did up here on the top for this example. I'm going to have the I equals, I'm going to have 5,200, which is 5200, times 2 and times the rate, which is 0.08. Now, if you notice, I use parentheses to show multiplication. You can do this. You can put the little time symbol that we did up here in the example, and either way is fine. So if I go to my calculator and I multiply those, I get 832. Alrighty, so that is my interest. That is what we're doing for this whole table. So let me do another one with you. I'm going to have my principal amount. It's always going to be the same, 5200. Now I'm going to multiply times 3, and my rate changed to 0.0825. So every time your year and your rate are going to change. So again, 5,200 is 0.0825 and times 3 in your calculator, and you'll get 1287. So potentially your numbers are just going to get higher and higher and higher as you go through this table. So please try and work a few of these at least. Make sure you know what you're doing for simple interest. Now, if we scroll down a little, the next type of problem is what if we wanted to figure out how much it costs totally to pay back everything, okay? And so what that means is you're going to take the I that you find, okay, like what we were doing right above, and we're going to plus our P to find the total amount. That P is what we start with. That P for this example is 6,000, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to still have to know that my time is over here, my rate, and my P is 6,000. I still have to change all of these by moving them to decimal places. So the first one is 0.06. And the second one, just like the others, are just 0.0625. Okay, and you're going to do the same for the rest of these columns. So it'd be like 0.065 and so on. All right. If you have questions on that, get a hold of Mr. Joel or myself. Now, for the total cost of repayment, I'm going to find my I, okay? And so I'm going to say 6,000, and it's going to be times my 2 years and times my 0.06, okay? And that's going to give me my interest, my I. So let me type that in my calculator really quick. And you get 720. Now, this is the I value. Okay, I'm going to put a little I above it. But it wants our total cost. So we're going to add back in what we started with. So I'm going to start with 6,000. So I'm going to add that right back in to get my total amount that I'm going to end up paying back. So if I add 6,000 to 720, I get 6,720. Okay, this is my T, my total cost. This is my final answer. All righty. So it's a little bit extra to add on that last little bit of adding my P, but it's definitely not more difficult than what we were doing. So again, if I were to do this next problem, I would have 6,000. Okay, so I wrote it out, 6,000 times 3 times 0.0625. Remember, each time your year changes and your rate changes. So on the next one, it'd be 4 and this one. So if I were to type that in my calculator, and remember, you can use your phone calculator, you can use Desmos. I would get $1,125, so $1,125. But remember, we're not done. We need to add back in that starting amount. So we're going to say plus 6,000. All right, so I went ahead and added that in my calculator, and your grand total is 7,125. So you might be thinking, when in the world am I going to use this? Well, we take out loans to help pay for like a car payment, okay? So like, let's imagine that we took out and we bought a $6,000 car. So we borrowed that money from the bank. By the time we get done paying everything back and we actually own our car, we would have paid with this year and this interest rate, we would have paid actually $7,125 for our car. Okay. Okay. So you're always going to end up paying more money back. That's that interest that we found out. All right. Sometimes interest is really high depending on how many years you pay it back or what the rate is. But we're going to talk more about those scenarios later. Let me make sure we just don't have another one. And here's a problem like you might see in your Schoology that we might give for these, but it's exactly the same thing. It's just not in a table format, okay? Charlotte will take out $12,000 for a student loan. Here is her rate of annual interest rate. It even tells you that. And then the loan term of 4 years. So there's your T. All right. I encourage you to figure out which one is each, P, R, and T. And then it says how much interest does she pay? So they don't want the total. They just want the I. So you're going to multiply those three numbers together. Remember, though, this rate has to be moved 2 times over. So if I'm going to write this down really quick, and then you can solve it, but I'm going to multiply 0.0674 with my 4 years and with my $12,000. So figured out that answer. Come back in just a second. All right, hopefully you got 3,235.2. So if you have questions, please get a hold of Mr. Joel or myself, and tomorrow we'll be looking at more interest.